Unscripted, unshackled, uncouth.
What you're about to hear is for more mature audiences only.
It's Miguel and Holly, Uncensored.
Hello, and welcome to Miguel and Holly Uncensored. This is our off-air podcast that we do 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Also, please check out our other podcasts. Spread the word. Please rate and review them. It only takes a few seconds, but it absolutely means a lot. So on podcasts like Miguel and Holly Full Show, Miguel and Holly's Blown Off, Miguel and Holly's Queen City Confessions, Shoot Your Shot, find them all on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. But please review and rate. It really helps us out, and share it with a friend, especially as people are about to start traveling for the summer, road trips or staycations or whatever, sitting by the pool, sitting by the lake, sitting by the beach. Share them for us, please. Thank you. So with Mother's Day coming up, I feel like all of the stuff that I look at to prepare for the show, like things that, like whenever you listen to our full show, it is a balance of like pop culture, local stuff, our lives, celebrity stuff. And there's also a lot of like Mother's Day stuff that's happening right now.
Right. Well, that falls in line with pop culture because there's a holiday coming up. So, just to be relevant, we're like, oh, Mother's Day, that's the holiday.
Well, there's this article that I came across this morning that I was like, we didn't have a spot for it this morning to discuss because I felt like this would require a couple of different times to talk about it because of the phone calls. So I wanted to bring it to the podcast to see what you thought. So the headline is Marlon Wayans says he never got married because he didn't want his mother to be jealous of another woman.
Girl, I saw this in the prep and I clicked on it because I'm like, let me get the deets.
Marlon is sharing the surprising reason why he's never walked down the aisle. The 51-year-old actor and comedian told the New York Times in an interview published on May 4th that he worried that his potential wife would make his mother feel slighted. Quote, I never got married because I never wanted my mother to be jealous of a woman. I never wanted my mother to feel second to any woman, he explained. He continued on that said his mother's death in 2020 at the age of 81 hit him hard and made him realize that she was his whole world. My mother's death broke me. It shattered me into a million pieces because that was my girl. He went on to describe her as very needy and said that they discussed his single status in her final moments together. I told my mother on her deathbed, I never got married because I always wanted you to be my number one girl. Those were my last words. I said, take that to heaven with you.
It's interesting that it says they had a discussion, but it only gives what he said and not what she said. I would love to know what she said in those moments. If she said anything at all, we don't know her condition, bless her.
When I said age 81, she may not have been totally
we don't
with
know.
it.
We don't know.
But I was like, okay.
Right.
My first thought was, you dummy. Are you kidding me? And I was like, wait a minute, hold on.
My first thought was, what the fuck? But as always, let's take a step back and think about the breadth and the whole entirety of the thing.
Right. And I was like, okay. So he understood that his mom, as he said, was a needy person and that she would not be able to handle him having a partner. So not only is he protecting his mother, he also is protecting a future wife.
Correct.
From having to deal with a needy mother.
Right.
So that's why I was like, okay, I can kind of understand where he's coming from. But then at the same time, like, he's now 51 and you've never been married. And I'm not sure if that's something that Marlon has always wanted, but I just feel like you've missed out on life.
Yeah. This might be one of those things where like two things can be true at once because obviously, we all only have one life. And so we all, can make choices about how we want to live our lives. And he did make the choice to make his mother his number one relationship in his life.
Right.
There's a couple different directions. I feel like it's all too much in my brain. So I'm going to try to like do it one at a time.
As you think about it and get your thoughts organized real quick, I did just look up because I wanted to be correct on this. Marlon Wayans did have a long-term relationship with the woman from 92 to 2013. And they have 2 children, and he shares a child with his former girlfriend. So he does have 3 kids, and he was with the woman for a long time. So there's that.
But he never got married
Mm-hmm.
because of his mother.
Right.
Or at least that's what he's saying. Obviously, we can only go with what he's saying, and then that's the truth, right? So, like, you chose that. You had a partner, but you chose not to marry this partner because mom's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a choice. And so at first I was like, yeah, oh, well, he's obviously protecting a potential partner of his. So that's smart. But not really, because he was with a woman for almost 20 years or more. Was it 20 years?
Yeah,
20,
it was 92 to
2013.
Yeah, a little 21.
Obviously, they didn't make it the long haul for whatever reason. We don't know. But he's going to come on here and say, I did not get married because of my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But he was in this 20-year relationship, and we don't know why that didn't work out. But maybe she didn't want to get married either, and that's fine.
Right.
So all this to say, and this is obviously building up to what I really think, but you're allowed to live your life however you want to. If you want your main partner to be your mother, you can decide to do that.
Right.
That is well within your rights to do that. However, does Holly O'Connor think it's healthy? No.
Right.
I don't. I don't think that's the call, and I don't think that is the purpose of a parent. I don't think it's the purpose of a parent to have a child and then expect that child to be your partner.
Right.
I think the purpose of a parent is not ownership. And I just had this conversation with Maya yesterday. When you have a child, you don't own them. You are, yes, birthing a physical human being into this world, but like however you believe, soul, spirit, the universe, God, something comes into the body when you're born, and you are an individual, and nobody has ownership over you. The parent's job is to shepherd this new soul into the early phases of being a human. Does that make sense? Like your job is to guide and protect and
prepare them for life.
Prepare and provide and do all these things that parents are meant to do. But what parents aren't meant to do is own their children. You do not own another human being, period. I don't think. So what I feel like isn't healthy is that this woman essentially made it known to her child, Marlon Wayans, that he shouldn't have any other relationships above the one that she and he share together.
Right.
And I just feel like that's not a parent's role. Like, that's not a parent's place, and that's an unhealthy enmeshment for a parent to put on a child. And it's an unhealthy thing for a child to feel the obligation and the duty to be that relationship to a parent. It's not healthy, because you're supposed to, at some point, launch into your own life and always have your parent there. If we're lucky, we get a relationship with a parent where we can grow as the kid grow in friendship, grow in respect and love and all those things, but not at the expense of living an independent life from that parent.
Right.
So that's what hit me at first, because I was like, whoa. He has stopped his personal growth at the expense of his own life to be there for his mom who needs him. And I'm like, I don't know. You just said he's been in this 20-year relationship. Obviously, it must have been fine. I mean, they were together for 20 years.
But they never got married.
And he's now saying it's because my mom, and I didn't want her to feel less than. It's not your job. It's never the child's job to manage the feelings of the parent. That's what I think. And I feel like some experts would probably agree with me. It is not the job of the child to manage the feelings and emotions and expectations of the parent. Like, That's your own job. Everyone's
Right.
own job is to manage their own happiness.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I feel like in this case where it's like, I feel like I kind of put the finger at both people, like the mom, like, let's just say that she never wants, like she's listening up wherever she is. And she's just like, well, I never told him that he needed to not marry someone. But I feel like this is where, especially like parents, because my YouTube algorithm is so fascinating. Actually, it's the Miguel and Holly algorithm on YouTube because I upload photo or videos and stuff to there. So I usually use the Miguel and Holly YouTube account. And so the things that it recommends, it's either like Beyonce, Whitney Houston music videos,
Yeah.
or it's all this like nostalgia where it'll be like, here's a mom taking her kids to Sears in 1971. And it's probably just some camera crew just following a mom for some, like 2020 or like Good Morning America segment. And they just like upload all the like raw footage. And I literally will just sit here after we're done with work. And once I'm done with everything or just in between and just watch stuff like that. What was the whole point of me saying all that?
I don't know. I was starting to get lost in your story, and I'm like, I hope we can make it back.
I know. Wait, hold on. Wait.
I wish I could rewind time. Wait, you were just talking about. She's up there listening, and she said, "I never told you."
Got it. Sorry, side tangent. I just watched a video about things or emotions and parenting and kids from like the 50s and the 60s, and things that were acceptable and weren't acceptable to do for parents and kids back then. And I watched a little bit of it. It was a little bit longer than I had time for. But one of the things they talked about and what we've mentioned before is that, kids were never to feel emotion. You were told you feel happiness, you feel sadness, you feel joy. You couldn't just, as a kid back then, say, this is what I feel. Is this okay? It was like, oh, you mad? Well, you can't be mad. You ain't got no reason to be mad. And so that's why
you were expected to be happy because I think back then parents didn't want to deal with all that. It had never been trained to them. They had never had to do it. And so it was like, unless you're happy, I don't want to see you.
Right. It's like, it's too much. And so that's why I feel like, yes, maybe the mom never did say that like, hey, you have to be single and you have to be my person. But it's all through actions. It's through word choices. It's through maybe when Marlon was growing up and starting to be famous, or his family was already famous, but like when he started to meet girls, and like every girl that he brought to the house when he was in high school or in his early 20s, she was like, why her hair look like that?
It's any number of both quiet remarks, snide comments, manipulative looks, body language. That would be like what you would just call manipulation. I mean, it's truly just, yes, maybe
and not
you
in
say,
an intentional way. Like, and
sometimes it is,
right.
But sometimes it's absolutely not.
Right.
But that's also where the root of people pleasing comes from. Like it's you want to control another person's perception of you. So a lot of people, especially parents, might get manipulative with their kids, not by being outwardly saying so, oh, I want you to just spend time with me, but they are very skilled at crafting the environment so that the kid does what the parent wants. Because we all know kids just want to please their parents at the end of the day.
Right.
And so these parents will be like, that's so great that you have so many friends to spend time with. I wish that someone would spend time with me. Just that. You never said to the kid, spend more time with me.
Right.
But you did say to the kid, spend more time with me.
Has there ever been a moment in your parenting so far that you've caught yourself doing something like that where you're like, ooh,
you mean manipulative type things? All the time. And this is why I'm like, y'all, this is why parenting is hard, because it's a constant thought process. I'm not comfortable today, so I'm just moving around a lot.
I know. That's why, like, I'm sitting back.
My
I'm just
back
like,
hurts. I had to take my seat cushion off. Anyway. Yes, but not. I feel like my root programming for like parenting is I want the best for my kid, for her to go off and be a productive, happy, sufficient, problem-solving member of society. That's my goal at the bottom. So I would never want to make her feel guilty or shamed for doing her own thing, like, Mrs. Wayans. Whereas we all have different things that we operate from. That's just my base operating mechanism. However, as someone who grew up in in guess culture versus ask culture, because there's two different ways that families operate, ask or guess. The ask people, I think, is where it's at, where, you need something, you're just going to ask for it. Hey, can you help me empty the dishwasher? Instead of, in my case, the way my family is, it's, oh my gosh, that dishwasher is still full. Nothing was asked, but it's my job to guess what that phrase means.
Interesting.
Ooh, she said that, so I know she wants me to empty the dishwasher. So that is my programming, and let me tell you how hard it is to shake off programming.
So you're always going around trying to guess what do people need.
Yes.
By let me do context clues of like,
Always.
well, if they said this, then they must need this.
Yes. And one time, like, my mom, even like late in her later years, basically confirmed that that's how we do things.
Wow.
Like, and it's hard because, especially if an ask culture gets married to a guess culture person, that communication can be difficult unless you recognize it, and it's tough. Because I'll do it to my fiance, and I hate that I do it. I wish I was an automatic ask person because life would be so much easier, both for me getting what I want and for other people without me trying to act like, what do they really mean? But like, that's what you had to do with my mom and my Auntie Pearl and everybody. This is how my family operates. It is guess culture, where they'll be like, oh my gosh, it is. My mom clearly should be like, it's going to be chilly today. And I'm like, yep. And sometimes I was really bad at it, but like, I would try so hard to figure out what it was. It's going to be really chilly today. God, what does she mean? Does she mean I need to wear a coat? Does she mean that I need to turn the thermostat up for her? Does she mean
Oh
that,
my God. That's why whenever we talk about stuff behind the scenes and like our boss will send us an email, you'll be like, what do you think he means? What do you da, 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 and you go on this whole like litany of questions, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not in his head. I'm just going to take his word for what he said. But if you're spending your entire childhood for everything that comes out of their mouth and you have to try to guess, for fuck's sake, that's
if you
stressful.
Get it right, it is like you won. You won. You're a good kid, and you get to bask in the glory of love.
Right.
But if you guess wrong, disappointment.
You
didn't guess right. Damn it! So anyway, that's how I was literally raised. So to undo myself from it, let me tell you, it's something I clearly struggle with to this day. But what really sucks is I catch myself doing it with Maya. So this does relate. I'm sorry, we went off on a tangent a little bit. It relates because what you asked the question, do you ever catch yourself being manipulative with Maya? And it comes in with this whole guess culture thing where it's still manipulative, but it's not manipulative like you better spend time with me. That's its own category of like holding on to your child like you own them. And I know someone like that very close to me in my life anyway. And we have discussions about it because I can't stand it. And they like to act like they're better than me. And I'm just like, look what you're doing. Like, look what you're trying to do with your kid. You're isolating them. You're trying to make them your only friend. And like, you're setting them up to like never be able to go live their own life because they're going to feel guilty if they leave you because you've sacrificed everything for them. Anyway, my toxic trait, and Maya, I love this and I hate it at the same time, but I love it. She'll call me out because she knows it. So this is what happens. This is an everyday conversation with me and her. We're coming home from dance on a Tuesday or a Thursday or whatever. And I'm thinking 10 steps ahead, like a mom does. You are trying to figure out the rest of the day. What needs to get done? What do I need to do as a parent? What do I need to make sure my kid does or has ready for school tomorrow? And so how that all comes out is, but I don't think about it like this. This is what makes it hard. What I think is, okay, it's Tuesday. She hasn't had a shower since Sunday. She doesn't need to wash her hair because we'll do hair tomorrow, but she just had dance and she's probably stinky and she's not going to want to take a shower. And I don't want to have to get into a fight with her about taking a shower. So all that is inside my head. I go, Maya, I think you'll feel really good if you take a shower. And she go, well, no, wait a second. I think I did it wrong. Let me start again. I'll go, Maya, don't you think you'll feel better if you take a shower? And she goes, no. And I'm like, oh no. Okay. Then I go on this whole thing where I'm like, well, sometimes I think it's really good for me to take a shower because sometimes I can just like, it doesn't feel good thinking about it. And I go onto this whole path. And then she's like, but I don't want to. And so then I'm like, okay, what other tactic can I get to try to manipulate her to feel what I need her to feel to get her ass in the shower? And so I'll get on this whole other guilt tripping thing where I'm like, well, what if, you can't just put deodorant on and think it's going to do the job. Like you actually finally, after like 5 minutes of this, of me trying to manipulate her feelings so that she'll think it's a good idea to take a shower, she's like, fine, I'll take a shower. And now I'm like, oh God, she's mad. And I'm like, listen, I just think it's really good. And she's like, why didn't you just say take a shower instead of giving me the option to not and then arguing with me until I said yes? And I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. That's all I can do is apologize. Because
that's
she's
a
right.
mic drop. That's like how my 11-year-old gonna come for me like that?
Yeah. And by the way, if I had ever said some shit like that to my mother. But this is another reason why I want to make it better for her so that we can have these open discussions.
But like, why? Because like I get, because there's so many things that you've explained. Like I always give the example of how you said that one time, how you want her to learn like how to communicate and like the consequences of things. And I always give the example of how that time she wanted a ice cream cone and you were like, no, you're going to drop it. And she was like, no, I want it. You're like, okay, well, if you want it, you're going to get it. But if you drop it, you're gonna have to clean it up. And you got it for her and she dropped it. And then you got home and she had to clean the car up. And she was like, I don't want to. And you're like, I'm trying to guide you, and this is why you should listen to what I say.
At first, I didn't remember that, but now I do.
Right. And I always tell that story about how that's just such a great way of communicating with your child about like letting them make their own decisions, but then learning that, yeah, you can make your own decisions, but there are consequences to them. I think that's perfect. But why do you feel like you can't just be like, girl, you need to take a shower? Why do you feel like you need to go through that whole thing?
I think about this. I think it's two-prong. I think it's automatic programming. Like I said, like I just grew up ingrained in that, and I still catch myself doing it with my fiance, even though we've had discussions about it.
Right.
I think I did it the other day. I think I walked out of the kitchen and I was walking outside maybe to go pick up Maya or something, and he's coming in the kitchen, and I was like, what did I say? I said something along the lines of having to do with the stovetop because I noticed that it had been dirty. And I said something very guessy about it not being clean by the time we start dinner because I'm like, oh, we're going to have to clean the stovetop off again. Instead of just like, hey, next time you do the dishes, can you please clean the stove? And as soon as I said it, I was like, damn it. So like I do catch it sometimes.
Right.
So I think it's just ingrained in I mean, we're talking basic human programming about how you communicate with another person.
Right.
Changing that. But then I also think I don't like arguments. And I don't like for someone to be mad at me.
No, that
goes back to my childhood too. Obviously, I didn't want my mom to be mad at me. And so I think it got transferred a little bit to my daughter. where I don't want my daughter to be mad at me because I knew what it was like being mad at my mom.
Right.
And I don't want my daughter to be mad at me like that.
Right.
And so instead of being what I consider to be forceful and bossy and authoritative, I don't want to do that because I don't want her to dislike me. But so I'll try to do like not only is it my programming to do so, it feels to me a little bit more gentle if we're just having a conversation. Wouldn't you feel so much better if you took a shower?
Right.
And I just, in my head, I want her to be like, yes, I would feel so much better if I took a shower, actually.
Right.
And I would be like, that's great. Well, why don't you take one? And she'd be like, I think I will, Mom. Thanks very much. And it would just be this lovely, blissful conversation.
But that's not how.
I could not be further from the truth. Like, I am so wrong in that.
Like, that's like how a good WB Seventh Heaven episode would go, but like not in real life. Because I always go back to what my grandma said years ago, because she was a cook for a daycare for most of her career, or for our church daycare that they operated, Monday through Friday. But she also, I think before the 80s before the 80s, she had her own daycare business in the house. So she took care of a lot of kids. And I remember when I started like helping my grandmother babysit, and because, I'm sort of like you in the sense where I want everybody to be happy.
We have some similar threads there.
Right. But at the same time, though, I like order. Like, I can't, it's too much. And so when I would babysit, I was a little like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Da, 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 da. And my grandma always told me that kids, as much as they'll push back, love order. They want order. They want
structure.
Sure. Right. They want someone to be like, here is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're going to have recess here. We're going to do this. And she's like, they may push back on a nap and they're going to be like whine and scream. But then as soon as their head hits that pillow, their ass going to be out. Well, she never said ass, but their butt would be out.
Right.
But I always remembered her saying that. And I always thought that if, we ever had kids, I would sort of be like the structure person, because that's also how I like to live. Like, I have to have structure. And like when I deviate from it, I'm like, whoo, what is going on? This is too much for me to handle. Oh my God. Like when we do our show live on the streets, like it is stressful for me because it's like, it's not regular structure. And our boss Trevor is like, have fun. It don't matter. The normal like time marks that we have to hit, it's fine. I'm like,
this is not fun. It's not fun when there's no structure.
I'm like, what are you talking about? Like most radio people would be like, yes, let's have fun. I'm like, no, I don't like fun. I like structure.
I'm a fun ruiner.
Right.
And I'm going to ask for structure right now.
Right.
No,
and so
we need it.
Yeah. And so that's why I feel like in those moments, it might be, as we're just talking through this just as friends, like as a person who's not a parent and who's not in those situations every day, of just being like, you need to take a shower. You don't want to, but here's why. End of story.
I know. And that's another thing that you shouldn't do as a parent is I will get on the lecture box, which is the why. Well, because for me as a kid, I craved knowing why.
Right.
If I had known why more often, it would have been easier for me to get along. So I will often give Maya the why, and she don't care. But I feel like I want to, just so she understands I'm not just being mean. But it's also hard for me as someone who had more of a guest culture mom, and our relationship was a certain type of way that I am still in therapy for. I still talk about that every now and then, where she desperately wanted to teach me how to like stand up for myself and do things for myself, and she would tell me to do that, but in practice she would do it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So basically it was like she was telling me one thing, but like I had to act another type of way with her. So ultimately I just ended up always acting that type of way with other people, where I get nervous to stand up for myself and use my voice. And so I think that also came into context with parenting, where it's like, I don't want to be this, authoritative person. However, there are a lot of times when I do incorporate that structure. And that's, man, her dad and I have such very different parenting styles. I feel bad for her because going back and forth has got to be confusing. And it is. It's stressful, probably, because my structure is that it is 8:30 p.m. bedtime during the week and 9:00 p.m. bedtime on the weekends. And that's pretty much a non-negotiable. Like she's tried a couple times, but the reason that I don't fluctuate on that at all is because I need that time after she goes to bed for me.
You're like, I need a moment. Mama
I
needs a
need
second.
a moment. And also, I'm really big on kids getting enough sleep. And so I'm a stickler about bedtimes. I had to do some pushing, which was not comfortable for me on this. I'm also a stickler about eating dinner at the kitchen table. Nobody but me wanted to do this. So it took a month of because I could not go to my family and be like, we're eating at the damn table. We're doing it. Like, I cannot do it because then everyone's going to hate me for it. But over time, I tried I was like, wouldn't it be nice to sit at the table? No, it wouldn't fucking be nice, Holly. Nobody wants to sit at the table. It's uncomfortable. We have really uncomfortable chairs and there's no television. So no, nobody wanted to sit at the table. And then I realized that wasn't working. And so I was like, I need us to sit at the table at least twice a week. And that was like the start. So it's taking me a while and I'm learning as I go. And I think that's one of the key things with my age of parents, like these elder millennial parents and maybe even younger millennial parents are trying to heal their own issues that they had with their parents, but also trying to parent in their own way, but not be total pushovers, but ask nicely. And it's confusing because you read so many different things. But I will tell you what, every single night of the week now we are eating at the dinner table.
Yeah, sometimes you got to put that foot down.
I really did. I did. I could give you see, I was about to go into the list of reasons. You don't really need the list of reasons why. But in my mind, it is just better to eat at the table, period, for lots of different reasons. And every now and then, some crazy stuff will happen and I will eat in the living room and then I freaking hate it. And I will be like, y'all see this? I'm doing this for you and I don't even like it. This is why it's not good. But I'm like, just shut up about that. But there are definitely things that I'm pretty hard and fast on. But there are some things where I want to give her some autonomy and some independence to make her own choices and then make mistakes from them.
Right.
Things like, and I'll make this quick because I feel like I'm talking a lot this podcast. However, and she's always been this way. When she turned 3 years old, she got real confrontational. And from 3 until 7, we had a rough time. I don't know what was going on, if she had, if her full soul sucked into her body and she was like, I am here to kick ass and chew gum and I'm out of gum. I don't know what it was, but she was a force from 3 to 7. And then at 7, it's like she kind of mellowed out into a better system and then we've been fine. But 3 to 7 was tough. And she was so, what do they call these kids? They call them headstrong or something like that. It's a good word, but can be difficult. And one of the things is that she also has some sensory issues. So during the winter, it would be so hard to get her to dress appropriately for the weather because she simply didn't want to, which I know most parents be like, well, you just shove their arms in a coat. You don't understand. With the sensory issues she had, it would be a screaming, ripping it off. And so finally, I had to, strong-willed, thank you, Janelle, I had to learn to pick my battles on where I'm going to put my foot down. And so by the age of 4, I remember we had to go see my mom in one of the many living places that she was in. And it was a cold rain. We're talking January. It was cold. And I have this 4-year-old child, or maybe 5 at the time, probably 4, who would wear boots, no socks with the boots. I got her into pants. She's wearing a short sleeve t-shirt. And I'm like, put this coat on. No. We're now we're at the point, and this is before I got healed about why yelling is not a good thing. Because it's not doing anything except I've lost control of my shit. And now I'm screaming at a child because that's on me. And so we'd get into these yelling matches and I would be like, put the coat on. And she's like, stop yelling. You're hurting my ears. And I'm also not putting the coat on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing to a 4-year-old. So then eventually I was just like, you know what? Don't put the coat on. This is not the hill I want to die on. And let me tell you, when other parents look at you in public with your short-sleeved child in the freezing cold rain, and you're like, you tell her to put the coat on.
Right.
You come over here and fucking tell her to put the coat on. I don't even know. But she was happy. Did she get cold? Yeah. And when she got really cold, she got a blanket or she got a jacket or she got a sweater or something. She got it. because she was choosing it. But I'm like, that's a battle I'm not going to win. I'm not choosing that battle. But like the battles that I do want to pick, like sometimes with the shower thing, that's why I'm like, okay, this is one of those instances where I'm like, sometimes you got to tell him to take a shower. But also, maybe sometimes don't take a shower for the third day in a row and see what happens if you show up at school stinky.
You're going to learn real quick.
Would it be better for me to physically carry her and throw her into the tub at the age of 10 and be like, you must wash yourself? I didn't want to. And then you go to school and the boy that you have a crush on is like, what's that smell? And you're like, she gonna be taking a shower real soon. You know what I'm saying? So like some of these problems will work themselves out. But the bottom line is I need to still in my everyday life get better at simply asking for what I want, even if it upsets someone, rather than making someone guess what I'm thinking, because that drove me nuts about my mom. But I do it, so I'm trying to work on it.
And that's, I feel like, can go to people for so many different reasons. Like I, very similarly, like I never wanted to rock the boat growing up with my mom or my grandmother. And because like, and not by anything that they like said, but I just always wanted to like get out of the way, because especially like when I got to that like middle school or like end of elementary school, middle school, when my grandmother wasn't doing well and we moved back to Atlanta to take care of her. And I just always kind of felt like I'm in the way, like I want to make sure things are fine. And so I would try
because you saw there was other stuff going on that took your mom's attention.
Right. And I was like, I want to make myself as small as possible so no one feels, because like the one time that I did sort of let loose, and like it was when we had moved, and I've told the story before, we moved from Denver to Atlanta, and it was like my grandmother had a stroke in that summer. And we went to go visit her. And then like a week later, they're like, all right, well, we're staying in Atlanta. We're not going back. And so as an 11-year-old, I had a really hard adjustment time of being like, wait, I was going into the 7th grade and with all my friends, and we were going to have all these plans, and I don't get to, I don't get to go back and say goodbye. And so when I got into school in Atlanta in 7th grade, and then like I either said something or wrote something that I was going to kill myself. And so my counselor, I blame her, she called the fucking house and left a voicemail on the answering machine and was like, Miguel is just saying, and I think it was something I wrote down because she like read it, and it was like, he wished he could go back to Denver and he wishes he wasn't here, and he said he's gonna kill himself. And my grandmother heard it, who had just had a stroke, and then she's like, oh my God, my grandson and my daughter have moved back here to take care of me. And then she was crying, and then I felt like a piece of shit. And so then I was like, I will just be quiet. I will stay small, and I will not make anybody hurt. And so it took me a very long time to finally, I think, speak for myself. And I think it didn't happen until circle way back to the Mandy situation, our third co-host who we worked with in Panama City, when we got the job in Tampa. And then she did not get it, even though I had told her that we would go together. And they were like, we only want Miguel and Holly in Tampa at Hot 1015. And everybody was like, well, we can tell Mandy. And I said, no, it has to be me, because I'm the person that told her that we would all go together. And I'm the one that's breaking a promise. And so I feel like for me, that was my first, like, telling someone some awful news that I caused them, and being like, I am so sorry. And seeing her break down in front of me, I'm like, if I can do that, I can do anything. If I can tell this woman who was about to change her life for our vision, and then be like, sorry, you have to leave your family and not get this amazing job, like, I can do anything. And so for me, that was the point where I can be like, all right, well, I can ask someone this. Or when it comes to my relationship with Abe, I can be like, hey, you leaving your old shit everywhere, girl. What's the problem? Because I know at the end of the day, nothing will match that moment in my life. Nothing will be as worse than that. Nothing.
Agreed. That's a tough one. I was just thinking, why do I have such a hard time? And I don't know if it's because I'm afraid of an argument with someone. Because, I mean, I can go back and forth a little bit, but it's very stressful for me. Because I was never allowed to argue with my mom. So I'm like, I don't have training on how to argue appropriately. I'm either all or nothing. So there's that. But I wonder, if I bring something up to someone and they get angry, I feel like I have like a tickle of an idea. And I think it's like kind of like they're gonna take away either love or a friendship, or that what I have to say ultimately won't matter. And maybe that's what, like, I assume that I will stand and deliver my thing that I need, and they're gonna just be like, I don't care. Maybe that'll hurt too much. I don't know.
And I guess for me, like, I've always just been so, like, I believe in myself so much that I'm like, you don't have to agree with me. Like, you don't, like, in that situation with Mandy where I'm like, you can be as pissed and as mad as you want to be with me. And she was, and she had every single right to be. She still to this day, if she was like, hey, I've just thought about that from 9 years ago. And you know what? I'm
a little
pissed
bit
all
pissed.
over again. I'd be like, you have every right to be pissed, and that's okay. But I'm going to sleep at night knowing that I made the decision that's best for me. And you have to make the best decision for your family. And I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
And
No,
so
that's
you
true.
just have to like live with that. And it's like, that's why like I don't believe in like arguing and like going back and forth with people, because I'm like, you're not going to see my point, and I'm sure as hell not going to see your point. So just know that this is where we are.
Maybe that's what bothers me, is not being understood.
Right.
Because I have this deep somewhere it's in there, longing to just like explain where I'm coming from, and the other person to be like, oh, I do get it.
Right.
I see it from your point of view. Maybe I don't agree with it, but I get where you're coming from. And so that's why I'm an over explainer. That's why, like, I just don't want to be misunderstood. That's one of the many reasons. I think there's a lot that goes into all this. There's not just one.
Yeah.
But that's helpful. That's helpful. What you said as an example, because I can be like, well, this is just how I see it.
Right. I mean, and
it's a struggle for me. It's a constant struggle. Because I am someone who is going to do what I think is right.
Right.
Like if everyone's like, oh, you're making the wrong choice, but I feel like it's the right one, I'm going to go with me. So in that way, I trust myself too. But I have a hard time then looking at people, or like trying to still be hanging out with people, or like whatever, once I realize that they think that I'm stupid, or they think that they don't get it, or they don't like it. And so I guess it really just doesn't matter. But that's what, like, when you know, it's sad.
It is. But I think for me, like, as a gay Black man who, like, just who I am as a human being, so many people don't agree with. And if I were to second guess my decisions of being open and, you know, being public about my sexuality and, you know, having a husband, I would be hiding everything. And so I think being a gay person, an out gay person, gives you that streak of defiance to where I'm like, bitch, I'm gonna live my fucking life. Because if I'm supposed to live by your rules, then I'm just gonna be unhappy and upset. And so I guess that's why that's always been easier for me to lean into, because I'm just like, girl, I'm gonna just be me. I'm not gonna be somebody else I'm not gonna be. And if you don't like it, well, you can just fuck off.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of male versus female in there as well. Because like I said, this is a multi-pronged issue.
100%.
So I think there's a little bit of that in there. It's just so interesting to get into this. So.
And all of it came from Marlon Wayans.
Okay, and at the end of the day, by the way, that shit was wrong. What she did to him was wrong, and what he did to her was wrong, and it's wrong all the way around. I don't care how sweet you try to make it at the end of your mama's life. That was wrong.
End of lesson. Holly, what's your social media?
Radio Holly, mostly on Instagram, also TikTok, Threads, Twitter, all that.
Mine is at Miguel Fuller. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Be Real, and Peloton. We'll see you all on Friday. Bye.
Miguel and Holly Uncensored.
Catch it on the iHeartRadio app.